Hi fellow crocheters, it's Janet with BDDpatterns.com. Thank you so much for stopping by today. In this video, I'm going to show you how easy it is to make a beautiful yet simple crochet shrug for any occasion. Alright guys, let's get started. Okay, for this example, I'm going to give out the particulars for a women's size small, but I'm also going to share with you how to customize this crochet shrug in any size with two simple measurements. As you can see from the overview, you will be creating this long sleeve shrug horizontally from wrist to wrist. You can determine the height of the sleeve, which is the same as the body, by adding rows. The shrug here will be a somewhat, but not too, snug fit. From there, you can add rows to increase the sleeve size for a more relaxed or even wider, dramatic sleeve. You can also shorten the sleeves by decreasing the stitch counts. You're going to need the following materials and notions to create this beautiful shrug. Some worsted yarn, and that's number 4. As pictured, you're going to need about 180 to 300 yards if you're going in the larger sizes. I used Karen 1 pound in off-white. If you want to use that, that's great. That way you have more than enough yarn for no matter what size you're making. You'll need a crochet hook that is a size K, a 6.5 millimeter. You'll also need the following notions. You'll need a measuring tape. You'll need a bent yarn needle to weave your tails. You'll need a pair of scissors. You'll need a row counter. A gauge swatch ruler is optional, and I'll have a link to that in the description below. And you'll need 6 jumbo safety pins. Now I'm going to have a link to the free overview or the free tutorial here in the description. So it's got all this on paper, or you can upload it to your tablet, use it on your phone, however you feel most comfortable with. How do I measure? All right, this part is much easier if you have another person to help, but don't worry, you can still do it by yourself. Use a piece of paper or your tablet to keep track of these two measurements. Grab your measuring tape and let's get those numbers. First, with the tape horizontally across your back, measure from wrist to wrist. If you're doing this yourself, then you will have to do it on your front. If you would like a shorter sleeve, then measure from point A to point B. In other words, from sleeve hem to sleeve hem. Write that number down. Going forward, I'm going to refer to this first measurement as measurement W. Next, measure the circumference of the fullest part of your arm. This is where your bicep is. Do this a few times. Don't keep the tape too tight or let it go too loose when measuring. Write down the largest of these measurements, and I'll refer to that measurement as measurement B. Again, the shrug shown in this video is a size small. The measurements used were as follows: wrist to wrist, 54 inches, and a bicep of 9.25 inches or 9.25 inches. The gauge swatch for the mentioned yarn and hook is 8 stitches by 8 rows. Since a gauge swatch is made over a 4-inch square, this translates to 2 rows and 2 stitches per square inch. Now we can calculate your size by multiplying 2 stitches by measurement W and 2 rows by measurement B. For our size small sample, that meant 108 stitches and 18 rows. When you do this, you'll also have to take into account the ease or the stretch of the shrug. When I designed this, I wanted it to be a slightly snugger look, so I took into account about a positive ease of 1 inch. Okay guys, the fun part is finally here. We're gonna make a shrug. Again, the size for this shrug is a women's small, and the bust measurement is 36 inches. So let's do this. For the pattern, after the foundation chain, the shrug is crocheted with a simple half double crochet stitch. Now, if you don't know how to do this, don't worry. I have a link to my half double crochet stitch tutorial in the description below. This is a super easy stitch, and I think you're going to find that it pulls out a really nice texture for you. Begin by chaining your W measurement times 2 plus 2 stitches for the turning chain. Work your first half double crochet stitch into the third chain from the hook. Then half double crochet across those remaining chains. In this example, you should have 108 stitches or 2 stitches less than that foundation chain, which would equal your W measurement times 2. At the end of each row, you'll need to chain 2 for your turning chain. Now crochet your shrug until it's 2 inches high. Stop to check that gauge and make sure you're on target. As long as everything is on track, go ahead and continue crocheting until your piece reaches the desired height, or in this case, 18 rows. Once you've reached that measurement on the last row, please do not chain 2 or fasten off, because guess what? We're gonna construct this shrug. I can't wait. All right, let's get our shrug put together. If you're following my pattern, then this is the section that's going to explain how to construct your shrug. If you're making a custom shrug, then the next section is where you'll learn how to construct that shrug. So for the pattern, look at the piece that you just crocheted, and you're going to need to determine what's your favorite side. What side do you want to use as the right side? After you've done that, with the right sides together, fold your shrug in half horizontally, as shown here in this chart. Place the fold at the bottom and the edges at the top. Now, in order to form the sleeves, if you're following along again with the size small, you simply need to sew the underarm seams to 16 inches. And you want to measure that from the edge towards the center, and then the opposite edge toward the center. If it's easier, just go ahead and put some stitch markers there so that you know where to sew up. But that's it. You're just sewing your underarm seams here. And once you're done with that, then please turn your shrug right side out. Let's go along and check out how to construct the custom shrug. So I tried to include 2 different construction methods for those of you that are crocheting a custom size shrug, only because I know that there's 2 kind of people. There's the kind of people that just don't really like to work with measurements that much, and there's the kind of people that they can't do anything without a measurement. So either way, guys, I've got it covered. Method 1, this is where you're going to take your panel that you made and you're going to center it on your back. Then you're going to take the top and the bottom edges and you're going to pinch those together where you want your opening to be. Now, when you figure this out, go ahead and take the panel off and safety pin it together. In other words, if you're doing this by yourself, this is going to be a little wonky, but it can be done. I've done it. I've been single for a long time before I met my husband, and I had to do stuff like this all the time. So just go ahead, like I said, and pinch it and then put the safety pins in it so that you can get a measurement of how wide your opening should be. Now, just don't make it too tight or too loose, because keep in mind, to finish the shrug, we're going to be adding a 1-inch border around the neckline. This is just going to give it that perfect professional look. So once you have determined the opening with your safety pins, take off your shrug carefully and then lay it flat and measure that number that's between the safety pins. Now what you're going to want to do is take that number and subtract it from your W measurement. This is going to give you also the measurement of your underarm seams. So mark the measurement with 3 safety pins as shown here in this schematic. Then go ahead and put the shrug back on just one more time to test it. The safety pin should hold it together enough so that you'll get an idea. And remember, don't make it too tight because we're adding that border. If this method is too wonky for you, then let's move on to the next method, which will, it's going to require one more measurement, guys, okay? All right, let's get there. Okay, as promised with method 2, we're just going to need one more measurement, and that's a full bust measurement. So you can see here from the graphic, you just stand with your arms stretched out, horizontal to the ground. Then with your measuring tape, measure around the fullest part of your chest. Do this 3 times and just make sure not to pull again the tape too tight or let it go too loose. After you've done it 3 times, it's best to take the biggest measurement that you got. Write it down, and next we're going to put it all together. Okay, for this last method for our custom shrug crocheters, we're going to take that full bust measurement and we're going to divide that number in half. For example, a full bust measurement of 36 inches divided by half is 18 inches. This means that your opening should be 18 inches. Next, you're going to take your W measurement and subtract that number. Then after you've subtracted it, take that number and divide it by 2. This is the number that will give you the underarm seam measurement for each side. So for example, in this video, our small has a 36-inch full bust. So what I did was I took that number, as I said, divided it in half, which is 18. Then I subtracted 18 from my W measurement, which gave me 36. Then I divided the 36 again in half, and then subtracted 2 inches. And what that 2 inches is for is that 1 inch border that we discussed. But when you're looking at things like this, you have to remember it's 1 inch on each side. Each side has to be even. So we're going to take 2 inches and subtract it off that 18 number. And now we know that our underarm seams are 16 inches each. Once you have your seam measurements, just mark those with stitch markers and sew them up. After you've sewn them up, weave the tails with your bent yarn needle and turn that shrug right side out. This is the finish line. At this point, what we're going to do is we're going to add a neckline border just so that our shrug looks nice and professional. So in order to do that, it's really simple. Just take your hook and join your yarn into one of the underarm seams. I have a graphic here to show you how to do that. Now what you're going to do is in that stitch, you're going to chain 2, or in that seam, you're going to go ahead and chain 2, and then put a half double crochet stitch into that same seam stitch. Now you can work in 2 rounds around your opening with half double crochet stitches. Please don't join the row 1 stitches, the first and the last stitch, with the slip stitch. That just kind of looks wonky. So what I like to do with this is I like to work in a spiral. That way there's no visible joining seam. Nothing looks messy. Everything looks super clean. So on the second row though, which is your final row or round, of half double crochet stitches, then you want to go ahead and join that first to last stitch. Just fasten off when you're done and weave that last tail. And I really want to thank you for coming along with me on this journey of how to make a shrug. I do hope that yours turned out beautifully. If you enjoyed this video, I'm just asking that you go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. If you make this shrug with this pattern or with a custom instructions that I gave you, please share this on social media. You can tag me at BDD Patterns. That's who I am straight across all social media. And if you'd like, it'd be really great if you could use the hashtags BDD Patterns and BDD Patterns Betty Shrug. I want to wish you all a beautiful day and happy hooking.